I found something that just seemed kind of interesting in my midst of doing whatever. Anyway.
You either make a down payment on a house or you buy a mid-range PC. Over the years, video game graphics have evolved far beyond what we ever could imagine to be possible. Pores in the skin, motion capture technology, photorealistic shadows and reflections that adjust themselves properly in real time, and that was 2018. Now we have pores in the skin, motion capture technology, photorealistic shadows and reflections that adjust themselves in real time at sub
and a
60
bunch of
frames per second with the
unoptimized
most
games.
powerful gaming GPU on the market, accompanied with ghosting, poppin', input lag, flickering, motion blur without motion blur. What the happened? I'm a simple gamer, and I like to think that I play a variety of different genres. The Last of Us, Danganronpa, Silent Hill, Red Dead, Hentai Girl Karen, Fortnite. But in recent
hell
years,
yeah,
I
brother,
found myself
hell
using
yeah.
mods more and more just to get my games to run well. Back in 2017, I owned a $600 PC, and I played PUBG, Skyrim, Assassin's Creed, and Borderlands on it all the time. But nowadays, it's hard to run any modern title on a PC under $1,500, or at least it's hard to
Through
make
W
the
games for
look
sure.
good. Yes, of course technology and graphics evolve over time, but it's clear that things have gotten a little disproportionate, especially when the beefiest, dump truckiest GPUs struggle to run games and don't even break the 60 FPS.
Yeah.
I'm talking, of course, about the rapidly
I heard
spreading
Silent Hill
virus
2 had a
gaming
little
and
bit
right
of
now
optimization
known as
issues,
bad
but
optimization. But what killed optimization? Why do developers not care for their games to run good and look good at the same time, and instead exclusively prioritize?
because money. It's all about money. If they could sell something that kind of works, people will buy it instead of something that totally works and no one buys it, you know? That happens all the time. Bunch of people fucking bought a bunch of games that are broken, but it's fine.
And there are a lot of reasons, and starting with the first 13th reason why: upscaling technology. In the past few years, artificial intelligence has evolved at an alarming rate. AI is being used everywhere. We have AI-generated videos like this Coca-Cola ad I got,
we need the money.
essays, AI-generated songs, AI-generated comments, which is worthy of a whole different video in itself, and of course, AI-generated graphics. Well, not completely AI-generated. Upscaling technology in video games works like this. The game runs at a lower resolution, like 1080p, and then it gets upscaled to a higher resolution, like 1440p. In theory, this will make your game look like it normally would at base resolution, but that's not necessarily true. Even on a quality setting, some problems just become glaring. In Fortnite, there's some serious shadow flickering and fuzziness going on in some areas, and in Red Dead Redemption 2, it may not seem too different at first glance, but look at how the game looks when it starts raining. What the f? AI has to guess what the game will look like at a higher resolution, and as a result, the game will never look like how the developers intended with upscaling on. I really care about vision and artistic direction, and I can't help but feel like DLSS and FSR are quick and easy solutions to improve frame rate, but molest the original concept. DLSS, or Deep Learning Super Sampling, NVIDIA's upscaling technology, has settings you can choose from, such as quality, balanced, performance, and ultra performance. What this does is lower the base resolution of the game, so instead of upscaling 1080p to 1440p, it'll upscale 720p or 480p to 1440p. The lower the base resolution, the more inaccurate the upscale. And for real, who the hell even plays on performance modes? DLSS is only enabled on RTX cards anyway, and I'm pretty sure all of those cards are capable enough for gamers to not have to submit to the worst case scenario to enjoy a video game. Oh shit. Another AI-generated solution modern NVIDIA GPUs are utilizing is the brand spanking new frame generation method. What this does is...
Yeah, I feel like a bunch of this stuff is just made game devs lazy. Because they have all this other technology they can rely on, so they don't have to put as much effort into something for it to be good. Which is really sad when you think about it.
It takes 2 frames from your game and will use AI to interpret what a middle frame would look like. So basically, your frame rate will go from 30 to 60. This will inevitably cause input lag, but for laid-back gamers who use wireless controllers, that won't be much of an issue, since wireless controllers obviously have input lag already, so it really depends on what game you're playing. Now, I already know a lot of you guys are probably thinking, Just1n, upscaling, frame generation, this is the future of gaming. Now I can play GTA 6 on my RTX
Better
20
not.
shitty Ti. And my response to that is short-term solutions cause long-term problems, and it's already happening. Yes, upscaling technology allows gamers to not spend $1 billion on a new GPU. But what it also does is encourage developers to not spend
$3,000 for that's not worth it.
New GPU. But what it also does is encourage developers to not optimize their games, since they know, hey, gamers will just turn DLSS on anyway to make the game run good. I just beat the Silent Hill 2 remake. It came out this October and it was nothing short of mind-blowing. It was also PC-blowing because my computer sounded like a Russian bomber jet trying to run the damn thing. Still loved it to death though, and was rooting for it at the Game Awards. Come on, Luke Roberts. The winner is... Come on, Luke Roberts. Melinda Jurgen. If we check the recommended specs for Silent Hill 2, it suggests using DLSS to play the game at a high setting on the recommended graphics card. Silent Hill 2 looks incredible, but it's also Silent Hill 2. The entire game is set in these liminal spaces, so it shouldn't be too difficult to run, even if it looks realistic. Well, if we install the Sunny Hills mod, which turns the town of Silent Hill into a normal small town on a beautiful day, we can see the actual draw distance for the game. Enemies pop in pretty close to James, but the areas that are loaded in are actually surprisingly far away. What's strange about this
that just looks kind of funny, actually.
The fog is thick and so close to James, you never even see the buildings that are actually loaded in. Rendering most of the map like this at once is not only pointless, it's actually loaded in. Rendering most of the map like this at once is not only pointless, because it takes a significant chunk of performance straight out of your game for no reason at all, but it's also ironic because the fog existed in the first few Silent Hill games for this exact reason. The PlayStation 1 didn't have the power to load distant areas, and to hide the hardware shortcomings, Team Silent slapped a bunch of fog onto the game, which fortunately gave it a more ominous tone, but conveniently improved performance as well. The fog in the Silent Hill 2 remake is still present to provide a bleak tone for the game's visuals, but the developers aren't utilizing it to its full potential. Some games make distant buildings look horrendous to save performance instead of just outright making them disappear, and the Silent Hill 2 remake doesn't even do that. Fine details still appear on the distant objects, but we never would have even seen it in the unmodded version because of the fog. Sure, you could say DLSS and frame generation are excellent solutions for gamers to not spend a fortune on a new card to run these games, but as we can see from the recommended specs, they're also solutions for developers to not make basic fixes for their games because they're thinking, well, why would we make our game run good when DLSS can do it for us? The RTX 4090 can't even play Silent Hill.
Yes, why do I have to do the work when something else can do it for me? It makes sense. Duh.
2 at 4K, which is the industry's current mainstream resolution at 60 frames per second. That is not only crazy, but it's unacceptable when it's clear that there are obvious fixes that will make the game in question run better without using upscaling. But despite all the graphical issues, it still should have won something at the Game Awards, goddammit.
And Silent Hill 2. And the Game Award for audio design goes to
Silent Hill 2, right? Come on.
Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2.
The PlayStation 5 Pro, which is the best
Senua's
console on the market
Saga.
for gaming, and over $1,000 in Canada if you want the disc attachment, uses its own AI upscaling technology known as PSSR, or PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution.
Or
I remember when the
PISS
PlayStation
is what I
5
call
was
it.
revealed back in 2020, they were preaching that this is a huge step for gaming because developers don't have as many graphical limitations anymore to how they want their game to look. Because of the convenience of power, developers are now making more limitations because of these short-term solutions like upscaling and frame generation to optimize their game for them. PSSR is not good for the future of console gaming. Think about it. Consoles don't allow for advanced graphical customization. On PC, you can select the texture quality, draw distance, shader quality, reflections, and on console, you can choose between performance or quality. In-depth graphics customization will never be a thing on consoles because they're made with the intention to be convenient. So now that we have PSSR, what's stopping these companies from making an unoptimized video game, using PSSR to make it run a stable 30 FPS, and then calling that the quality setting? This, right now, when some games can't even play 60 FPS at 4K on the fattest GPU on the market, is not good, and will only give future developers an incentive to use shortcuts while making the game's visuals. Ray, tracing. Two words that's been crammed into every gaming tech presentation ever since 2018. So here's a quick explanation of what ray tracing actually is. Ray tracing is a graphics technique that simulates
it's
how
cool.
light behaves in the real world.
It just seems kind of, I don't know,
Prior to ray tracing
unnecessary a lot of the
the
times.
industry in 2018, developers would have to make their own lighting techniques in the game to simulate as accurately as possible how the light and reflections would behave. The thing about ray tracing is that in most modern games, you won't even notice a difference. Most of the awe you'll get from a game that's ray traced is the placebo effect whispering in your ear that the game looks way better. This is Cyberpunk with ray tracing on max, and this is Cyberpunk with ray tracing off. As you can see, there is a graphical upgrade with ray tracing, but more importantly, there's a huge dent in performance. Ray tracing has actually existed for a very long time though. The initial idea for it was thought up in 1968, and Pixar started using it in their animated films, beginning its reign in A Bug's Life from 1999. Granted, they only used it for like 2 shots, but regardless, they did use ray tracing. That's why 3D animated games from the early 2000s still look better than modern day stylized games. Now that we have the technology to implement ray tracing in video games though, it's a pro and a con. In some games that don't have detailed casting effects like Minecraft, ray tracing is an enormous upgrade. But in games like Cyberpunk, it looks great in some scenes, but most of the time you probably won't even notice it. It's true that ray tracing is an option. You don't have to enable it, but the support of this new expensive technology means the downfall of an old but gold method of creating reflection. I'm going to use Half-Life 2 for this example. In Half-Life 2,
I feel like more people, more people would be open to it if it didn't take such a huge performance hit. Which I hope at some point in the future, it does not take a huge performance hit, because that is really annoying. Or something look kind of better.
To create convincing looking water. While this can be expensive to performance if used on a large face of water like an ocean for example, it's great for something small like a puddle. Now you guys may be saying, Justin, don't be a dingus, you dingus! Technology needs to evolve over time, otherwise we'll be stuck in the same place forever. And I 100% agree with you, you're not wrong. I just think that a lot of modern developers are putting all of their chips into ray tracing, even though most modern GPUs still struggle to run games with ray tracing on. In Star Wars Outlaws, for example, there's no option to turn ray tracing off. You can only lower and enhance the quality. All I'm saying is that while I would like to get to the point where every game automatically has ray tracing on, I just feel like most gamers aren't there yet. Since a lot of people still use GTX 1080s, RTX 2080s, and whatever the AMD alternatives are, I don't really know. So why limit your audience? There should absolutely be ray tracing options, but I think that developers should still put a lot of effort into optimizing their games for when ray tracing is off, so it still looks good and not muggy everywhere. Most people don't have the money to sink into a brand spanking new 4090 that can actually utilize ray tracing well. So the rest of the gamers, including console gamers, are forced to be stuck with these subpar water effects and reflections because the developers think that they can just glaze over it as fast as possible since there's an easy, quick solution, and that's to let ray tracing do the work for them. I love ray tracing.
Also, they seem to be under the impression that everyone likes 30 FPS. No. It is terrible, especially like modern games coming out. The fact that at the bare minimum, like 60 isn't like what should be the like standard for everything. It's just, it's so annoying.
Tracing, I love shadow quality, a lot of reflective surfaces, but let's be real, this is too much for what we can handle right now. We can barely even run 4K open world games on the newest cards, so why are we building video games for ray tracing? That is insanity. And again, if ray tracing is an option, that's great. All I'm saying is the game should still look good for the people that don't want to have it enabled. Developers need to optimize their graphics to where the gamers are at, and not 100% to where the newest hardware is. Of course,
it really
optimize
should.
so the games look as good as possible on that hardware, but don't make it impossible for everybody else, because that's just a lose-lose for everybody involved. Now these new games, Stalker 2, Remnant 2, Silent Hill 2, The Witcher 4 all have something in common, and it's that they're all made in the Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine 5 to be specific. When Unreal Engine 5 was announced, people thought it would be a huge leap for developers since it would
Looking
handle
right.
a lot of the fine graphical details, taking the work off of the
Also, hi,
programmers.
Keanu Reeves.
The
How are
flaw
you?
with UE5 is that the graphics are incredible, but they're also expensive and unoptimized. Most of these Unreal Engine 5 games suffer the same issues, and that's not only bad performance, but very blatant ghosting. Ghosting is when a frame lingers for a bit, even after it moves on. There's also some pretty clear flickering problems and the hardcore push for temporal anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing is a graphics technology that's been around for a while, to be fair, which removes the jagged edges on objects. With it off, the game is completely raw. Each pixel is exactly where it needs to be, at the cost of everything looking sharp. What anti-aliasing does is it slightly blurs the image by softening the edges on objects and makes it appear less like a video game and more like a picture. TAA is used pretty much everywhere now in modern gaming, and if you stand still, it looks pretty good, but if you move, it looks blurry and horrendous. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great example for a game that's made with the idea that TAA will be enabled. The game without it looks weird, and with it on, looks blurry. It's clear that the developers didn't take the time to optimize the game without it, and instead decided to really push for TAA. But the problem is that TAA in Red Dead Redemption
it still
2
looks
isn't
good
completely
though.
optimized either, and just ruins the image when the game is moving, which is, you know, most of the game. Stalker 2, an Unreal Engine 5 game, is probably the
But yes, I think that over-reliance on anti-aliasing is kind of funny for people who make their living making games.
perfect example of a game that relies on TAA to look good. And it's clear that the game was made with TAA in mind, because the trees are dithered without it on. So basically, if you want to play a modern video game, you either get sharp, unrealistic, and untouched graphics, or turn anti-aliasing on and get a main dish of blurry game with a side of ghosting. Anti-aliasing was not always this much of an issue though. Let's look at Skyrim. With anti-aliasing off, the game looks sharp, sure, but it still looks great. While Red Dead Redemption 2 with anti-aliasing off looks sharp and weird, and like the developers never even wanted it to be an option. It's another strange time for gaming. In 2008, we had the notorious piss filter trend, where every game had a brown and yellow color scheme.
Yeah,
In
piss
2018,
filter. I remember
every game
those
had to have
days.
a battle royale mode, and in 2024, every game is made in Unreal Engine 5, and nothing runs as well as it should. To prevent this from happening, developers need to slow down and take the time to remove the unnecessary clutter
Everything,
that
yeah,
collapse
the old
performance.
piss
They
filter.
Need to think, well, how can we make this reflection look good without ray tracing? And they need to consider the broad audience of gamers instead of what the loaded game journalists who can actually run the game at max settings will say about it.
What the hell?
But most importantly,
What the
what do you guys think
heck?
about all this? How can developers fix this modern issue in gaming? Make sure to let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll check them out as soon as I possibly can. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch this video.
I don't know. Because I don't develop games. But I feel like the easiest way is like working alongside it opposed to allowing it to do things that you can't do. Or just make the games properly in the first place so you don't need to use anti-aliasing. I don't know.
Make sure to have a good one. Also, I wrote a song about this.
Let's go.
I hate TAA, choppy gameplay. For the price I pay, I would think that most the shit I buy would run okay. I can't trace no rays back in the day. If this is AAA, then there's something that I gotta say. What happened to my frames? What happened to my frames?
I don't know what happened to your frames.
When all of these games still look the same, and I know that my PC isn't to blame. Oh no, what happened to my frames? What happened happened to
I don't know, man.
when all of these games still look the same, and I know that my PC isn't to blame. Oh no, it isn't to blame.
Are you sure about that?
Tell me that this will last forever.
Maybe not.
What? Come on.